Hello and welcome. Tonight, we stand on the scorched limestone cliffs of the Valley of the Kings, where the desert wind is heavy with secrets. Beneath these rugged hills lies a story lost to the ages, the brief, brilliant life, and the sudden, unresolved death of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Was it fate, misfortune, or treachery that ended the reign of the legendary boy king? As night gathers over Thebes, we invite you to step into the shadows and follow the drama, step by step, right to the threshold of forbidden tombs, past golden treasures and ancient curses, toward one enduring question: what really killed King Tut? The setting sun, Egypt before Tutankhamun. It is the 14th century before our era. Egypt, once prosperous, is shaken to its core. Upon the throne sits Akhenaten, a controversial reformer who turns his back on Egypt's countless gods. He commands the worship of one, the sun disk Aten. Temples are shuttered, priests exiled, and the capital itself uprooted to a brand new city, Akhetaten, known today as Amarna. This was an era unlike any before or since. Statues depict the royal family with elongated heads and strangely vulnerable expressions. The priesthood of Amun, long the country's spiritual bulwark, is swept aside. Akhenaten's religious revolution is total, but also deeply unpopular. The kingdom teeters. Territory slips away to foreign powers as the court is seized by new obsessions. Then, unexpectedly, Akhenaten dies, and a child inherits the storm. Birth of a boy king. Tutankhamun, born into chaos, somewhere around 1341 BCE, the frail son of Akhenaten and an unnamed royal sister. His real mother's identity is blurred. Her mummy, known only as the Younger Lady, in tomb KV 35, revealed through DNA to be both Akhenaten's sister and wife, a window into the royal house's deep and sometimes destructive tradition of intermarriage. The bloodline is pure, but flawed. Genetic studies decades later will reveal the seeds of illness sown within their genes. When Tutankhamun ascends the throne, he is just a child 9 years old. Power does not rest in his small hands, not at first. Instead, Vizier I, an experienced courtier, and the warrior general Hormheb guide his every step. But this child king is a watershed. Under his reign, Egypt reverses the heresies of his father. Amarna is abandoned. The city's stones are stripped, its temples fall to dust. The royal family is on the run, yet this flight restores Egypt's spiritual balance. Temples to Amun are reopened. Murals depict the return of old festivals and sacrifices. The king himself changes his name from Tutankhamun, living image of Aten, to Tutankhamun, living image of Amun. Was this reversal the boy's will or eyes? The answer remains veiled by propaganda and the passage of centuries. Yet from this upheaval, Egypt emerges, battered but beginning to heal, under Tutankhamun's childlike visage painted on altar after altar. Tutankhamun's reign, restoration, and uncertainty. The years that follow are a whirlwind of restoration. Under the watchful eyes of Eye and Hormheb, Egypt's gods are drawn back from exile. Tutankhamun's painted walls show a youthful king observing religious rites, leading rituals once reserved for the greatest rulers. But even as the outward displays of piety return, the boy king's physical presence hints at deeper trouble. Images from his tomb depict him sitting while hunting or making offerings, an unusual pose for royal art. Tennis and senate, chariot races and battle scenes, all seem tinged with wishful thinking, not recollection. Tutankhamun's court life is delicately balanced and perhaps precarious. He is married to his half-sister, Tutankhamun. Their union is royal custom, but family tragedy lurks nearby. Two mummified stillborn daughters are found much later in his tomb, underscoring the genetic toll of generations of inbreeding. Some say Egypt enjoyed a flicker of stability during Tutankhamun's reign. Others counter that the kingdom was fragile, reforming only just as the king himself began to fade. Either way, the record of his life is incomplete. It is the silence before the storm, the mystery of death, sudden, violent, or inevitable. In the 9th year of his reign, aged somewhere between 18 and 19, Tutankhamun dies. No scroll or inscription records the cause. There is no monument to his final battle. The event is not chronicled in the grand language of pharaonic triumphs. Instead, there is only a gap, quickly filled by I, who leads the royal funeral and in one unique mural is depicted performing the hallowed opening of the mouth ceremony upon the dead king. Why does the official record fall silent? Was his death so unremarkable, a fever, an accident, a private illness? Or was it a silence forged by fear, ambition, or conspiracy? The discovery, Howard Carter and the undisturbed tomb. It is November 4, 1922. British archaeologist and Egyptologist Howard Carter and his team chip away at the valley floor, uncovering a stone step beneath an old workman's hut. Slowly, the outline of a sealed doorway is revealed, bearing royal stamps. Howard Carter cables to Lord Carnarvon, his benefactor, at last have made wonderful discovery. The days that follow are charged with suspense. On November 26, Carter slices through the corner of a sealed door as Carnarvon looks on. Can you see anything? In the gloom, gold glitters everywhere. Yes, wonderful things. What Carter and the world discover is, in every sense, extraordinary. The only near-intact royal tomb of its kind, filled with over 5,000 artifacts, a golden death mask, and at its heart, a blackened, fragile mummy. Yet as Carter's team painstakingly removes the treasures, early rumors swirl. Grave goods are densely packed, some oddly mismatched, with gold shrines, wooden chariots, weapons, and personal effects squeezed tight. The rooms themselves are smaller, less grand than those of longer reigning kings. Scratched-out names and strange alterations suggest certain items may have been intended for someone else. The narrative grows stranger beneath the dust. First examination, signs of trauma and the anatomy of mystery. Carter's excavation soon uncovers something disturbing. Tutankhamun's mummy is in poor shape, not simply from age, but from unnatural destruction. The gold mask, jewelry, and delicate wrappings are fused together by thick, dark resins that have blackened much of the body. The remains are stuck fast inside the innermost coffin, requiring Carter's team to use knives and hot sun to loosen the grip. The mummy is cut to pieces in the process. The skull appears damaged. Small bone fragments are present in the cranial cavity. The left leg is shattered just above the knee, a compound fracture, sharp and unhealed, with embalming resin pooled in the wound. Many ribs are missing. The sternum has vanished. The heart itself, the symbolic seat of the soul, is gone, a startling omission in royal mummification. Early X-rays, decades later, deepen the crisis. Some researchers point to the skull fragments as evidence of a fatal blow. Others see the leg injury as the result of violence, accident, or even a poorly managed burial. The questions multiply. Was the boy king murdered? Did he perish in a chariot accident or on the battlefield? Or did his own body betray him, even as Egypt struggled to restore its lost traditions. Forensic imaging, a new age of investigation. It is not until nearly a century after the discovery that the mummy yields new secrets. A 2005 Egyptian-led team, with the help of advanced CT scanning, digitally unravels Tutankhamun's body without touching it. Key findings emerge. The skull. There is no clear evidence of a fatal blow to the head. The bone fragments inside the skull, once thought to prove murder, are determined to have shifted post-mortem, very likely the result of Carter's forceful unwrapping or embalming, not pre-death trauma. The palate is cleft but not associated with a lethal genetic disorder. The elongated form of the skull, once cited as evidence for Marfan syndrome or similar afflictions, is within normal Royal Egyptian variation. The leg, the most compelling injury, remains the shattered left femur. The fracture is open, a bone break exposed to air. There are no healing responses, and embalming material has seeped into the wound. This could only have occurred if the break happened shortly before death. Infection is almost certain. In the age before antibiotics, even a royal physician would likely be powerless. Some say the king, already frail, died from blood poisoning, a gleaming victim of sepsis. The feet. The scans show multiple deformities: clubfoot on the left, bone necrosis in several toes, and mild scoliosis. The king's right foot is flat, a possible compensation. He likely walked with a limp, used a cane, and suffered chronic pain. Over 100 walking sticks are found in his tomb, some heavily worn, supporting the image of persistent disability. Other clues. The body shows no evidence of phosphorus poisoning or ingestion of toxins. Tests for Klinefelter syndrome and Marfan syndrome are negative. Yet the forensic tests do reveal one more fatal element: DNA from the malaria parasite Plasmodium falciparum, the most deadly strain. Tutankhamun is the earliest confirmed victim known. Unraveling theories: accident, disease, and intrigue. Chariot crash theory. For years, some argued that Tutankhamun died in a catastrophic chariot accident. His tomb contained several ceremonial chariots, and some artwork showed the king participating in hunts or military exercises. The left leg's gruesome break, missing ribs, and lack of a heart seemed to match the aftermath of such a disaster. In more recent times, British documentaries and media outlets have reignited the chariot crash theory with their own staged reconstructions. The king, already weakened, suffers a collision and is mortally wounded. But the CT scans challenge this vision. The physical evidence suggests that only the leg was broken before death. The rest of the skeletal trauma may well have resulted from the hasty, brutal attempt to detach the body from its coffin centuries later, and from later mishandling. The notion that a boy with a clubfoot, weakened by malarial infection, could have raced a chariot at full speed is now doubted by most medical experts. Murder theory. From the moment Carter opened the tomb, death and rumor have been entwined. The skull fragments gave rise to murder theories. Was Tutankhamun struck down by jealous advisors, by Horemheb, even by his own wife? Supporters cite the dramatic succession. Becomes king, marries the widowed queen, and is depicted conducting final rites forbidden to all but the closest kin. They add the mysterious Hittite letter. A grieving queen begs the foreign king to send a prince to be her new husband, writing, "I will not take a servant of mine. I am afraid." The prince is murdered en route, and Ankhesenamun vanishes from history. Yet every forensic re-examination returns to the same point. No physical evidence of a fatal head wound, stabbing, or poisoning has survived. The murder theory, while dramatically satisfying, remains unproved, an eternal historical cold case. Disease and genetic disorders. Among the most compelling and tragic explanations is that Tutankhamun was doomed not by malice or accident, but simply by bad genes. DNA studies confirm that his parents were brother and sister, a tradition intended to preserve divine blood, but one that amplifies inherited disease. The king's body shows evidence of clubfoot, bone necrosis, mild scoliosis, and possibly a cleft palate. These ailments would have made Tutankhamun a physically fragile young man, susceptible to myriad health risks. Modern geneticists build a painful composite, a frail, limping king, marred by painful feet and vulnerable bones. Malaria, confirmed by ancient parasite DNA, could have devastated the immune system, already weakened by inherited mutations. The open leg fracture, perhaps from a fall or a minor accident, would have been catastrophic under these conditions. An infection, possibly blood poisoning, may have finished the tragedy. Tomb anomalies, rushed burial and recycled treasures. One of the most persistent mysteries is the tomb itself. Tutankhamun, a king, but interred in a strikingly small, hastily arranged tomb, KV-62, far more modest than those of other pharaohs and likely not built for a king at all. Some clues suggest KV-62 was meant to be the burial place for someone else, possibly and was repurposed at the last possible moment. Artifacts within the tomb tell their own story. Canopic coffinets with faces that look more feminine, shrines and masks with names and features reworked to suit the young king, treasures whose iconography doesn't precisely match Tutankhamun's own, coffins that might have belonged to Smenkhkare or Neferneferuin, then retrofitted amid the confusion of a rushed interment. Even the burial seems frantic. The tomb walls show evidence that the paint was still wet when the burial chamber was sealed, as revealed decades later by patterns of microbial growth, ancient fungus that dined for days on the humid, nutrient-rich mural before dying, its marks left behind as a permanent record of haste. Tutankhamun's body itself is blackened, with some experts suggesting that oils applied for embalming in excess and with poor ventilation essentially cooked the corpse through a slow, exothermic chemical reaction, a phenomenon some call spontaneous combustion, although it's really more a grim experiment in chemistry gone awry. Microbial and pyrotechnic investigations. When the team of Harvard microbiologists examined the brown spots on the painted walls of KV-62, they found evidence that the tomb had never fully dried before it was sealed. The moist, warm atmosphere was a perfect laboratory for bacteria and fungus, which rapidly colonized and left visible marks, yet, by a stroke of luck, may have actually helped preserve the artwork by sealing out other destructors. This discovery deepens the impression of a rushed burial and suggests a last-minute scramble to provide a pharaoh's send-off, a snapshot of panic and urgency in Egypt's ancient corridors of power. The Curse of the Pharaoh, Myth, Mystery, and Media. The world's fascination with Tutankhamun's death is inseparable from the myth of the pharaoh's curse. Within weeks of the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon, who financed Carter, died after a mosquito bite grew septic. The media exploded with tales of the mummy's revenge, a curse that was said to strike down anyone who dared disturb the sacred rest. Strange misfortunes fueled the legend, the deaths and illnesses of several people connected with the excavation, electrical failures, personal tragedies. Sherlock Holmes author Arthur Conan Doyle fanned the flames, suggesting ancient priests had set demons to guard the tomb. Newspaper readers, and perhaps the superstitious deep within their own hearts, were taken in. Yet statistical analyses show most involved with the excavation lived long, sometimes extraordinarily healthy lives. Carter himself, the primary desecrator by the measure of a curse, died peacefully almost 20 years later. Most deaths were the product of age, mischance, or the hazards common to visitors in the Middle East at the time. More plausibly, scientists suggest any curse was a matter of bacteria and fungal spores, trapped for centuries and then released, but not at the level of supernatural doom, simply the risk of old, sealed tombs. Still, to many, the myth persists. The king who died without warning, whose tomb was protected by unlikely chance, whose body was blackened by accident and rushed by nervous priests, became, in death, infinitely more influential than in his brief, uncertain life. Cultural aftermath, Tutmania and global reverberations. The 20th and 21st centuries have brought Tutankhamun's face to billions. His golden mask to the world, his treasures inspire fashion, film, literature, and art. Tutmania has become a global phenomenon. Shows in London, Paris, New York, and Tokyo draw millions, eclipsing the pharaoh's own contemporary notoriety by orders of magnitude. Even the story of his tomb, told again and again in immersive exhibitions and virtual realities, reminds us how powerfully a good mystery grips the imagination. The king who lived in the shadow of his father's heresy and died young is, ultimately, a pharaoh of memory rather than history. Final reflections, the last secret. Perhaps in the end, Tutankhamun's most enduring power is not in his death, but in the unknowable. The boy behind the golden mask, the crippled king who reawakened Egypt's gods and died with so much left undone. What did he dream, shifting restlessly in his palace on the Nile? Was his death an accident, a slow disease, the final chapter in a saga of royal inbreeding, or the calculated strike of palace intrigue? Science edges ever closer to the answer, narrowing the possibilities with each scan and sample. Yet for every secret revealed, another seems to rise from the sand. This is Egypt's great gift, to let history shimmer always on the cusp of revelation, forever keeping its final mystery intact under gold and stone. So what do you believe? Was Tutankhamun's death a mere accident, or an ancient conspiracy veiled by time and tomb? Will his secrets ever all be known, or does Egypt always keep something for herself?